described in Libya, it should not be exaggerated to mean that you should really focus the bulk of your efforts in expanding into Africa. It's a great place to get specials, but you shouldn't take it too much to heart.
Absolutely. You shouldn't really spend more than half of your income in Africa. And as well, you want to keep upgrading. Your main focus is upgrading and taking specialties you need.
Well, see, I get the Balkans so often for no apparent reason. So I usually take the Balkans, drop into Africa, get Libya, the gas in Iraq, then move to Turkey, and finally proceed up past the south part of Russia into West Europe, East Europe.
That's not a horrible strategy. One of the things I dislike about Turkey is that the special has to be built in Turkey. And it's a great unit otherwise, but it makes it really difficult to actually use it in a battle because oftentimes as Turkey you're going to be fighting around in Eastern Europe, and it's a long way for those units to stop. You have to kill that bunker first.
Yeah, that's the only down part, but otherwise I think they're great units, especially if you can capture like Belarus, if the game lasts that long.
Now, back here in Algeria, I just destroyed the bunker with ghosts in it, and you do have to do that in order to take the Algerian gas. Otherwise those guys will snipe your poor little SUV. So usually the gas is kind of the last little center that you'll take. How many more minutes do I have then?
I also want to mention something, is that anyone watching this will notice that Eldfinnr is not yet expanding into France. That doesn't mean that he's in a weak position. He actually is building up his economy, and he's in a position to take, like we've said, specials in Africa. Right now he's going to France, but he could even have waited another turn or two and just built up a huge bulk of a military force in Spain, and that wouldn't have made him a weak position. It would have simply strengthened his position so that when he does exit Spain and go into Europe, then he's in a great position. So.
Yeah, and we're trying not to emphasize to ignore Africa. It's a great place for specials. It's a trade-off for being a bad position in general, but I personally like it. I don't hang the entire game there, but I like it nonetheless. And yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing that I did probably wrong, in my personal opinion, in taking out this border of France is I did not use my Algerian bombers, which probably would have been cheaper and maybe even a little faster to take out those two center cannons. But I will eventually start building a few of those so I can take out the bunkers in Paris, which makes things much easier.
Overnote. He did do that in an earlier take.
As I think Elfinnr said himself, I also want to stress that if you were in Western Europe, if you're Spain, Portugal, France, anywhere near there, then proceeding to Belgium is one of the most important strategies I can possibly think of. If you get that special, that puts you in a massive, massive advantage against your neighbors and your enemies. I mean, it won't mean that you win the game, but if you are in Western Europe, you should put Belgium as one of your top priorities, because if someone else gets it, you could be in a very difficult position.
Absolutely, and a lot of people, if they just rush a whole bunch of units into Western Europe to attack you, they won't necessarily expect you to have those Belgians, even if you've taken over the cities. And it really helps to deceive people if you don't actually put barracks there, and you just move medics there manually. It's a little bit slower, but it catches people off guard a lot easier.
I also noticed that a lot of people overlook Belgium. I have actually seen a lot of people try to argue that Belgium is not worth it, or even not a critical component to a military force that people can wield, and that's one of the most egregious errors I've ever heard in diplomacy, and I'm sure Elfinnr can say the same.
Absolutely. Honestly, the most powerful specials in diplomacy are the Protoss specials, as long as they're used properly and the player expands so that he has the income to use them. But unit for unit, they'll outmatch any other special in the game.
And I know when we say something, don't like over-exaggerate it. When we say the Protoss are the better, that doesn't mean you should never take Zerg. I mean, that's just stupid.
Absolutely.
If it's right there, you want to take it.
Absolutely. If you start as Sweden, you definitely want to focus on, you want to land in Germany or Poland and take those Zerg specials, because if you have 300 Zerg units by turn 6 to someone else's 40 Protoss units, you're going to kick their ass.
I have not been counting the turns, and the mission objectives in replay are not showing. Does anyone know what turn it is right now?
I actually
right
just
about
saw
turn
that
5.
it is turn 5. It is 5.
Yeah, I do take a little longer as Spain, and take a little bit more time, but part of that is because I am multitasking and expanding on 2 different continents. So when you do that, expect it to take a little bit more time. It's not a big deal because the payoff is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, agreed. He's in a great position. He could base up in Africa, or he could keep expanding in Europe. When I was doing my Denmark training video, I did something of the same situation. I didn't really have a developed base in any particular continent. I mean area, Scandinavia, Europe, or the UK, but even what he's doing here, it's almost turn 6, but he's got a lot of good specials, and he's about to get the Libyan one, and he's got good upgrades. He's got a pretty decent base. He's got expos, and etc., etc.
Yeah, and once a player in Spain has taken Libya and has taken Belgium, and maybe Germany, if you have the inclination to do that, you want to start focusing on finding your opponents and building an industrial base to deal with that. If you have an enemy in eastern Russia, you want to start building barracks and factories in Africa. Or, if there's someone in Europe, you want to build in France, or maybe up around Belgium. So you can start producing a massive army and focus on that.
Okay, we've got about, 3 minutes left, it looks like. So, say whatever you want for the last 3 minutes, but we'll need to be getting towards a wrap.
I think that's pretty much it. I think the rest of this game is just focusing on taking those caps that I weakened. Up in France, I haven't quite broken through the border and taken Belgium, but it's actually a really easy place to take, as long as you don't overestimate yourself. But the right unit counting, it's a breeze.
Yeah, and just while we're on it, while I saw Libya, I'm gonna point out that Libyans are a great addition to an army. They don't make the army. They absolutely decimate.
I think you got cut out.
Where did I cut then? Oh, it went on the commentary because it's internal, but...
I'm just gonna take the Libyan cap and the Belgian cap, or something about Libya.
Yeah, it went on the commentary because it's on my computer, so it's just that they complement an army, not make an army, but they decimate infantry at 20 armor and 20 damage.
I think you're talking about the Templars. You got cut out again, but whatever you said, I think I agree with. They're great.
They add to the army, not make the army, yeah. Especially with the Dragoons, which heavy hit.
Yeah, and one of the things about the guards that people kind of overlook, if you have an ally nearby and you're using those guardians, tell your ally to build medics, because when those Libyans get hit, they get hit for 1, 2, 3 damage at a time, and the medics, they make them almost invincible.
I've heard a trick where you lift your command center and kill the bunkers there, and you can get medics with Libyans to start the game,
Yeah.
which is great.
Sounds interesting, but I haven't actually ever seen that done.
So this is wrapping up. Any last comments before we say goodbye?
Well, I'll just say that this was a pretty sexy replay, and great job, Elfinnr.
Thank you, Moscow. I am glad that you were able to join us today. And hopefully you can give us another training video sometime in the near future. Also, just a quick side note, I don't know if you saw that in Belgium, but we jumped the gun just a little bit taking that capital and lost my SUV just before I killed that pylon. Definitely a mistake you want to avoid, because I could have gotten that income for the turn, but I'm going to miss it.
Anyway, comment, rate, subscribe if you like this kind of stuff. We'll be coming out with more of these soon. See ya.
Goodbye.